The paintbrush fell from my hand and clattered against the hardwood floor. 3 strangers stood in what was supposed to be my guest bedroom, surrounded by paint cans, drop cloths, and my furniture shoved haphazardly into one corner. "Who are you?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I'd just walked into my own house to find it looking like a construction zone. "And what are you doing in my home?" The tallest one, a man in his 20s wearing paint-splattered overalls, looked past me toward the hallway. We were hired to paint this room. Is there a problem?" "Hired? By whom?" But even as I asked, I already knew the answer. My sister Jessica appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, wearing that same sweet smile she'd perfected since childhood whenever she wanted something. "Sarah, you're home early. I thought you had that work conference until Friday?" She stepped into the room like she owned it, gesturing at the painters with casual familiarity. "I wanted to surprise you. The room needed updating anyway, and sage green is so trendy right now." My pulse hammered in my ears. "You hired painters, in my house, without asking me." "Well, I'm living here now, so I figured." "Living here?" I cut her off, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "Jessica, you asked to stay for 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks." She laughed, that tinkling sound that used to charm everyone around her. "Oh, come on. You have this whole house to yourself. It's not like I'm in your way. Besides, I thought you'd appreciate me improving the space." The painters had stopped working, their eyes darting between us like spectators at a tennis match. I took a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Everyone out, now." "But we're not finished," the tall one started. "Out. I'll pay you for your time, but you need to leave." Jessica's smile finally cracked. "Sarah, you're being ridiculous. They've already started, and I've paid them half up front." "With what money?" The question came out before I could stop it. My sister had been between jobs for the past 8 months, which was why she'd called me crying 3 weeks ago, saying her roommate had kicked her out and she had nowhere to go. Like an idiot, I'd said she could stay in my guest room, temporarily. "That's none of your business." She crossed her arms, defensive now. "I'm an adult. I can manage my own finances." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, my stomach already sinking before I even saw the numbers. Sure enough, $300 had been withdrawn from our joint account yesterday. The joint account I'd stupidly added her to last year when she was going through a rough patch and needed help paying her car insurance. "You took money from our joint account?" "Jessica, that was for emergencies." "This is an emergency. I need a nice space to live in." The room was depressing before. The audacity of it took my breath away. This was my house. I'd saved for 5 years while working 2 jobs to scrape together a down payment. I'd signed the papers alone just 4 months ago, fresh off a divorce that had left me with nothing but debt and broken trust. This house was supposed to be my fresh start, my proof that I could stand on my own. "Everyone needs to leave," I repeated, this time looking directly at Jessica. "Including you." Her eyes widened in mock surprise. "You're kicking me out? Your own sister? Where am I supposed to go?" "The same place you were planning to go after 2 weeks." I turned to the painters. "I apologize for the confusion. Send me an invoice for your time today, and I'll pay it." They didn't need to be told twice. They gathered their equipment quickly, mumbling awkward goodbyes as they filed past Jessica, who stood frozen in the doorway. When we were alone, she tried a different approach. Her face crumpled, and tears welled in her eyes. "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through together, I'm your baby sister, Sarah. Mom would be so disappointed in you." There it was, the mom card. Our mother had passed away 3 years ago, and Jessica had been using her memory as emotional ammunition ever since. But I was done falling for it. "Mom would be disappointed that you manipulated your way into my home and then tried to take it over," I said quietly. "Pack your things. You have until the end of the day." I walked out of the room before she could respond, my legs shaking. In the kitchen, I gripped the counter and tried to slow my racing heart. Through the window, I watched the painters load their equipment into their van and drive away. The house suddenly felt too quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Fine, but you're going to regret this." I should have taken that threat more seriously. The next morning, I woke to someone pounding on my front door. I stumbled downstairs in my pajamas, squinting against the early sunlight streaming through the windows. When I opened the door, 2 police officers stood on my porch. "Sarah Mitchell?" the older one asked, consulting his notepad. "Yes? We received a call about a domestic disturbance at this address. May we come in?" My brain struggled to catch up. "A domestic disturbance? There's no one here but me." "Actually, ma'am, we were informed that you're trying to illegally evict your sister from the residence you share." The words hit me like ice water. Share? This is my house. I own it. She was staying here temporarily, and yesterday I asked her to leave. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "Do you have documentation proving ownership?" "Of course I do." "Let me get it." I left them at the door and ran upstairs to my office, my hands trembling as I pulled out my folder of important documents. The deed was right there, my name alone on every page, no mention of Jessica anywhere. When I returned and showed them, the older officer examined it carefully, then looked up at me. "This appears to be in order. Is your sister still in the residence?" "I don't know. She was supposed to have left yesterday. I hadn't checked the guest room this morning. Part of me had been afraid to look. Mind if we take a look around?" I led them upstairs. The guest room door was closed. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Jessica was there, sitting on the bed with her laptop open, looking completely at ease. She'd even hung up new curtains. "Oh, officers, thank goodness you're here." She jumped up, her face a perfect mask of distress. "My sister is trying to force me out with no notice. I've been living here for months, and suddenly she wants me gone. I have tenant rights." "Months?" I nearly shouted. 3 weeks! You've been here 3 weeks!" "Ma'am, please lower your voice," the younger officer said. Jessica's eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. "I've been paying rent. I have receipts." She held up her phone, showing what looked like Venmo transfers. I snatched the phone from her hand and examined the screen. Sure enough, there were 3 transfers to my account, each labeled rent, $50 each. "These are from 2 days ago," I said slowly. "All 3 of them, backdated to different weeks. You sent yourself fake rent payments after I told you to leave." The older officer took the phone from me, studying it. "These do appear to be recent transactions with manually entered dates." Jessica's voice rose, desperate now. "She's lying! I've been paying my share. This is my home too." "No, it's not." I turned to the officers. "She's my sister. She asked to stay temporarily after her roommate's situation fell through." I said 2 weeks. "Yesterday, I came home to find she'd hired painters without my permission and spent money from a joint account we have. When I asked her to leave, she refused. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I want her out." The older officer looked between us, then sighed. "This is a civil matter." "Ma'am," he said to me, "since your sister has been staying here for several weeks and has some documentation of payment, even if questionable, you'll need to go through the formal eviction process. You can't just force her out." "Are you serious?" "I'm afraid so. We recommend you contact a lawyer and file the proper paperwork. Until then, she has a legal right to remain in the residence." Jessica's face transformed from distress to triumphant in an instant. The sight made my blood boil. After the officers left, I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed guest room door. From inside, I could hear Jessica talking on the phone, her voice bright and cheerful. "Yeah, it totally worked. She can't do anything now." I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. My best friend Lauren, an attorney, answered on the second ring. "I need help," I said, "and I need it now." Lauren arrived within an hour, briefcase in hand and fury in her eyes. "Let me see everything," she said, spreading papers across my dining room table. I showed her the deed, the joint account statements, Jessica's fake rent receipts, everything. She made notes, asked questions, and the more I explained, the angrier she became. "Okay," she said finally, "here's what we're dealing with. Technically, the police were right that you can't physically force her out without going through eviction proceedings, but—" she held up a finger. "She's not a tenant. She's a guest who's overstayed her welcome. And the fake rent payments? That's fraud. So what do I do? First, you document everything. Every interaction, every text, every phone call. Start today. Second, we file for eviction based on her being a guest, not a tenant. Without a lease agreement or legitimate rent history, we can fast-track this. Third, you close that joint account immediately. She'll freak out. Let her. She committed fraud. If she makes things difficult, we have leverage. Lauren's expression softened. I'm sorry you're going through this, but we'll handle it. Over the next few days, I followed Lauren's advice meticulously. I closed the joint account and opened a new one in my name only. I installed a camera in the hallway outside my bedroom for security. I documented every time Jessica left and returned, every time she had friends over, every time she made noise late at night. And there was a lot to document. Jessica seemed determined to make my life miserable now that her plan had been exposed. She played music at full volume until 2 a.m. She invited friends over who parked in my driveway and blocked me in. She used all the hot water every morning before I woke up. She even started telling people that I was the one who'd been freeloading off her, that this was really her house and I was the unwanted guest. My coworkers noticed the change in me. I was exhausted, stressed, jumpy. I couldn't sleep in my own home, couldn't relax, couldn't feel safe. One morning, I arrived at work to find my boss, Patricia, waiting at my desk. My office, she said quietly. Now. I followed her, my heart sinking. Patricia was kind but no nonsense, and I'd been distracted lately. What's going on, Sarah? She asked as soon as the door closed. Your work hasn't been affected yet, but I can see something's wrong. I almost lied, almost said I was fine, but the concern in her eyes broke through my defenses, and the whole story came pouring out. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, My daughter went through something similar. Ex-boyfriend wouldn't leave her apartment. You know what finally worked? What? She made it impossible for him to stay comfortable. Changed the Wi-Fi password, removed her name from utilities so he'd have to put them in his name, made him face actual responsibility. He was gone within a week. The idea took root in my mind. Jessica had been treating my house like a free hotel. What if it stopped being free? That evening, I changed the Wi-Fi password and removed it from the router. When Jessica asked for it, I said simply, This is my internet service, in my name, that I pay for. You're not entitled to it. Her face went red. You're being petty. I'm being practical. If you want internet, you can get your own service installed. Next, I stopped buying groceries that Jessica liked. I meal prepped for myself and kept my food in a locked mini fridge in my bedroom. When she complained, I said, You're an adult with your own income. You can buy your own food. What income? I don't have a job. Exactly my point. The comfort level in my house began to shift. Jessica's friends stopped coming over as frequently when there was no Wi-Fi to use. She started spending more time away, crashing with other people. But she still came back every few nights, just often enough to maintain her claim of residence. Lauren filed the eviction paperwork. We had a court date set for 3 weeks out, but Jessica wasn't done fighting. One afternoon, I came home to find my credit card company calling. We're calling to verify some unusual charges on your account, the representative said. My blood ran cold. What charges? Several at furniture stores, totaling about $3,000. I hadn't bought any furniture. Those aren't my charges. I need to report fraud. While I was on the phone freezing my card, Jessica walked through the front door with 2 delivery men carrying a brand new couch. What is that? I demanded, covering the phone. A couch for the living room. Your old one is hideous. Ma'am, the delivery man said. Where do you want this? Nowhere. Take it back. I didn't order this. Jessica's smile was poison sweet. I used your card. It was sitting right there on the counter. I figured you wouldn't mind, since we live together. I finished the fraud report while the delivery men stood awkwardly in my foyer. They eventually left with the couch, and I turned to find Jessica filming me on her phone. What are you doing? Documenting your abusive behavior, refusing to let me have furniture, cutting off my internet, starving me by not buying food. People are going to see what kind of person you really are. You stole my credit card. Borrowed. Sisters share things. I called Lauren immediately. She's escalating, I told her. What do I do? Keep documenting. We're building a case. The judge will see exactly who she is. But the waiting was killing me. Every day in that house felt like torture. I started staying late at work, going to the gym for hours, anything to avoid being home. I slept with my bedroom door locked and my phone under my pillow. Then, one morning, I woke to the smell of smoke. I bolted out of bed and ran downstairs to find Jessica in the kitchen, a pan on fire on the stove. She was just standing there, watching it burn. "What are you doing?" I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink and put out the flames, my hands shaking. "Making breakfast," she said calmly. "I forgot about it." "You forgot? Jessica, you could have burned the house down." She shrugged. "Accidents happen." That was it. That was the moment I realized this had gone beyond petty revenge. This was dangerous. I called Lauren. "I need an emergency order. Today." She nearly burned my house down, and I have it on camera. I showed her the hallway camera footage, which had captured smoke billowing from the kitchen and Jessica's delayed reaction. Lauren's face went pale. "I'll file for an emergency protection order. This shows reckless endangerment. Pack a bag and go stay somewhere safe tonight." "This is my house!" "Why should I leave?" "Because your safety matters more than pride. We'll get you back in, but right now, we need to keep you alive." I packed a bag with shaking hands and drove to my friend Maya's apartment across town. That night, lying in her guest room, I cried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I cried for the sanctuary I'd lost, for the sister I thought I knew, for the trust that had been shattered. But I also felt something else. Determination. The next day, Lauren called. "We got it. Emergency protection order. Sheriff's Department will escort her out this afternoon. You need to be there." I drove back to my house with Maya beside me for support. 2 sheriff's deputies were already there when we arrived. So was Jessica, standing on the porch with 3 large suitcases and a defiant expression. "This is illegal!" she shouted as I got out of the car. "You can't throw me out like this." One of the deputies, a woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense expression, handed Jessica a document. "Ma'am, this is an emergency protection order. You need to leave the premises immediately." "But I live here." "No, you don't." The deputy's voice was firm. "The property owner has provided documentation of ownership, and there's evidence of reckless endangerment. You need to leave now, or you'll be arrested." Jessica's face cycled through several emotions: rage, disbelief, desperation. Finally, she grabbed her suitcases and marched toward a car parked at the curb. I noticed for the first time that her friend Brianna was in the driver's seat, watching with wide eyes. Before getting in, Jessica turned back to me. "You're going to regret this. I'm your only family, and you're choosing a house over me." "No," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "You chose greed and manipulation over family. I'm just choosing safety." She slammed the car door, and they drove away. The deputies did a walkthrough with me, documenting the condition of the house. The guest room was trashed clothes everywhere, food wrappers, stains on the carpet I'd just had cleaned. But it was empty of her presence, and that's what mattered. After they left, Maya helped me change all the locks. We spent the rest of the day cleaning, scrubbing away every trace of Jessica's occupation. With each room we restored, I felt a weight lifting. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, in my house, drinking tea and watching the sunset through my window. My phone buzzed with texts, some from Jessica's friends calling me heartless, others from my own friends checking in. I ignored them all. Then a text from my Aunt Caroline, my mother's sister. "Heard what happened. Your mom would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. Drinks next week?" I smiled and typed back, "Yes, I'd love that." The court hearing 3 weeks later was anticlimactic. Jessica didn't show up, which Lauren said was common when people knew they didn't have a case. The judge reviewed the evidence, the deed, the fake rent receipts, the credit card fraud, the fire incident, and issued a formal eviction order and a permanent restraining order. Jessica was forbidden from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. "Any violation will result in immediate arrest," the judge said. "Miss Mitchell, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Your home should be your sanctuary." Walking out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Lauren took me to lunch to celebrate. "You did it," she said, raising her glass. "You stood up for yourself." "We did it," I corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. What are you going to do about the guest room? I'd been thinking about that. The room that Jessica had tried to paint sage green, the room that had become the symbol of her attempted takeover, needed a new purpose. I'm turning it into an office, I decided. A proper home office where I can work and create and have space that's entirely mine. Over the next month, I did exactly that. I repainted the room a warm gray, installed built-in shelves, bought a beautiful desk that faced the window. I filled it with my books, my plants, my art. Every morning, I'd sit there with my coffee and feel grateful. I also started therapy, something I should have done years ago. My therapist helped me understand how I'd been conditioned to put family first, to sacrifice my own needs and boundaries. You're allowed to protect yourself, she told me. Even from family. Especially from family. Jessica tried to reach out a few times through mutual friends, always with the same message. She was sorry. She'd changed. Couldn't we just forget this happened? But I remembered the fires, the fraud, the manipulation. I remembered lying awake afraid in my own home. Some bridges, Lauren told me when I expressed doubt, need to stay burned. She was right. 6 months later, I hosted a housewarming party, the real one, the one Jessica had tried to prevent by creating chaos. My friends filled the house with laughter and warmth. Maya brought her new boyfriend. Lauren brought her wife and their toddler. My coworker, Patricia, came, along with several others from the office. Aunt Caroline arrived with a beautiful houseplant and a story about my mother that made me laugh and cry at the same time. Standing in my living room, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I felt it. Home. Not just the building, but the feeling of safety, of belonging, of being exactly where I was supposed to be. Someone asked about the guest room, whether I'd rent it out. No, I said firmly. That space is mine. I learned the hard way that not everyone deserves access to your life. Amen to that, Maya said, raising her glass. Later, after everyone had left and I was cleaning up, I found myself in that converted office, looking at the photos I'd hung on the walls. There was one of my mother, taken a year before she died, smiling in her garden. I touched the frame gently. I stood up for myself. Mom, I whispered, just like you always told me to. I thought about Jessica sometimes, wondered where she was, what she was doing. But I didn't wonder enough to reach out. Some lessons are painful, but they're necessary. I'd learned to protect my peace, to defend my boundaries, to understand that family isn't defined by blood, but by behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jessica's lawyer. She wants to discuss reconciliation. I deleted it without responding. In the quiet of my home, with the door locked and the security system armed, I made myself a cup of tea and curled up on the couch. My couch, the one I'd chosen, in my house that I'd earned. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the windows in a rhythm that felt like safety. I'd fought for this peace. I'd stood up when everyone expected me to give in. I'd chosen myself when the easier path would have been to cave to family pressure and false obligation. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because home isn't just walls and a roof. It's the feeling you get when you close the door behind you and know that you're safe, that you're valued, that you don't have to explain or justify or defend your right to exist in your own space. That feeling is worth fighting for. And I'd finally learned that I was worth it too.